Having been summoned to the head teacher's office to meet the well-suited, clipped and ready employment officers, I was asked what it was I wanted to do after I left school. In response to my reply, a policeman or a clown, a lead-heavy silence filled the room. They began to explain with some careful wording how my lack of qualifications meant I was sorely restricted. They said with a distinctly stilted tone that the only avenue open for me was to pursue that of an apprenticeship in one of the building trades. But even this suggested a great deal of uncertainty. Fuck it. I left school with my tail well and truly between my legs, and like a rejected dog sought comfort in those who posed no threat to what was left of my equilibrium. This meant hanging out with such mates as I could find, who like me were not caught up in a relentless quest for some unforeseen job with a vague reward in some unforeseen future. I wasn't by any means alone. A lot of my friends were told that their futures were a non-starter. Apart from small firms like Marshall's Select Aircraft Industry and the Cambridge Instrument Company, there was no manufacturing to speak of, no pride of inheritance for the working man in this city. It was simply accepted that they would end up doing menial jobs, usually of a physical nature, for small reward. The average labourer's wage in Cambridgeshire at this time was among the lowest in the country. And as I was being shoved hammer and sickle into that bag, I counted myself as one of them. I was hurt, infuriated, and full of screaming chaos. We didn't know it then, of course, but we had been brainwashed by our teachers and parents, who had in turn been brainwashed by theirs into a straitjacket of worthlessness. The brochure of our lives told us with colourful clarity that they were over before they started. It was as if we had been herded together into the corral of a dissipated and distracted present. For some, this was the end of the line, but for others, it was an opportunity to begin the dance. It was generally felt that we had nothing to gain and therefore nothing, it would seem, to lose by getting drunk or pilled out on a Friday and Saturday night. Yeah. Eventually, this dissipation lost its parameters until such time as the whole week was taken up with trying to put our past and future lives behind us. By now I found the whole idea of being among lucid people alarming, to say the least. I tried to avoid anyone who might show up my total inaptitude for anything remotely academic. This became difficult, if not impossible, around the unquestionable cerebral highflyers who dominated the Adams Road area where I lived. It wasn't until I got a temporary job as a waiter in the hallowed eating halls of Keyes College that I started to see how infantile many of the undergraduates were, watching them throw their food around, playing skittles with the glasses and plates. I often felt as if I were donning the robes of a zookeeper, feeding frenzied wild animals in an enclosure. But even with this newfound insight, I still felt utterly intimidated by the idea that this Gothic institution of learning deemed them to be somehow superior. What I didn't realise was how profound and near the knuckle my insights were. And the lessons just kept on coming. This was a time when the Whitney Bar was placed within the dying shadow of the waltz and jive era. The echoes of the 50s coffee bar were being left behind with an intense feeling that nothing could really be seen or heard from the mannequins of those bootlegs ties and blue suede shoes. Teddy boys were losing their grip as a wild representative of the working man, and their mantle was being passed to the rotter. While those who wore the Burton suit of the weekend were buying scooters and tarting themselves up as mods. I tried to stand proud as a mod. For a few months, but this remained a short-lived fantasy. Being a sharp dresser, as mods certainly were, cost money, and the Reddies, despite my family background, were ever in short supply. Through the combination of pocket money received with gratitude from my father, who gave it out like he was running a very tight ship, and helping out at his kitchen shop, I did manage to get the Levi's, a Ben Sherman shirt and a pair of desert boots. Ronnie Reed and Charlie Whedon, a couple of fishtail parka wearers I knew, offered me a lift, but I bottled out of going down to Brighton, which perhaps on reflection was a good thing. In 1964, the rivalry between the mods and rockers culminated in full-scale war, making headline news in the broadsheets of the day. I was shown proud pictures of these violent clashes between my friends in the News Chronicle, the Daily Mirror, and even the Times. Even if it wasn't as clearly defined as the skirmishes between the mods and rockers, you didn't have to go down to the coast to seek out a war. Cambridge, as it had been for centuries past, was still firmly split between town and gown. The constant conflict underlying these two rivals was well established as a normal, if not disturbing, part of city life. A sinister trait, acknowledged by so few, affecting so many, and I'd been given the bird's eye view. My name is Matthew Scurfield, for those of you who don't know. I was born and brought up in post-war Cambridge, in Adams Road, on the posh side of the tracks, with all the dons, their case studies, PhDs, and endless expertise. I was a miserable academic failure and ended up going to what was for me, especially at the beginning, a brutal secondary modern school for boys on the other side of the tracks in the nether regions of the city. I have to read it because I'm a bit nervous. In short, I came from a prominent, some might say, bohemian Cambridge family. Both my mother and father were up at Cambridge before the war and came away with degrees in English. I came away with a pair of desert boots, Levi's, long hair, and many, many friends. Among them was Syd Barrett. And I'd like to thank Syd, whose undoubted spirit has brought us all here together today. Amen. There were a few of us who were fortunate to have become friends with Syd as his star was rising. And such was his imagination that you could find yourself passing through those social niceties to enter an artistic and poetic field where there were so many possibilities. But there will be more about Syd later. For now, I want to establish some of the background. When many of
water.
Did you bring in
some water?
I was just throwing out.
We'll get to you in a minute. All right. When many of us were growing up in Cambridge, there were only two colleges for women, Girton and Newnham. The rest were a breeding ground for a male-dominant society who thought it was their right and privilege to run the world. This was a time when you could still get into Oxbridge through the family name if it was deemed necessary. Working class graduates, as my father would say, had been trickling into Cambridge like token pawns since the late 30s. For some, this may seem like a class war, a matter of storming the barricades. Despite what my dad and his communalistic colleagues may have felt, a revolution of sorts was starting to take place, which saw many of the more adventurous locals seeping in by the back door. The grammar school was gaining some ground, bringing an undeniable sideways shift. A slow change, but it was palpable. Not that anyone from our school would have been given a place in Cambridge or Oxford.
Absolutely not.
God forbid.
Oh no.
There can be no doubt now that the end of the 50s saw a greater swing on the horizon. Young men and women from the opposite ends of the social spectrum were beginning to hang together. The servant and the master could be seen in some quarters sitting at the same table and talking shop. If your ear was truly to the ground, you could hear the buzz being initiated by the intelligentsia and the plebs who were relaxed enough to explore their company of opposites. On the dance floor, under the spotlight of stage and screen, through the pioneers of popular music and poetry, by way of social interchanges in pubs and coffee bars, through political movements like CND, within the subculture, on the streets, and even between the intakes of drugs. The early 60s saw that small shift swelling into a global surge of questioning. With the backdrop of World War II and the relative fear-bred way of life not that far behind, this was a time as seen by many for abundant change. The one constant throughout my time in Cambridge then had always been my relationship with water. Not just the teary ones either. As the years drew their course, the life force I found with this unending element started to sweeten a competitive need. When I was 12 years old, I became a member of the Granta Swimming Club, where between bouts of nervous diarrhoea, I did as much as I could to keep one stroke ahead of the boys. My first foray with the mill pond in Cambridge was taking part in the Swim Through Cambridge, an annual event set up by the club for earnest swimmers to show off their aptitude to the gatherings given window by the banks of the Cam. I took part 3 or 4 times, as I remember, and wound up with the last few in Jesus Green, where the swim ended, bemused and frustrated. Before the race, I used to notice how much fun other kids were having, sliding down the weir from under the mill bridge, and really my wish was to be part of that and be free of the formalities of the swimming club. By the time I was 14, I suppose you could say my wish had come true, for the social element had taken over from the wet. The mill pond had now become a meeting place where I would go and catch up with old friends from the manor. We hadn't quite cracked the self-conscious nut about being underage at the drinking pens down there, but we could usually coach some kindly elder or unsuspecting undergraduate into buying us beer from the Anchor pub. Having scored our illicit brews, we mingled with the summer crowds above the old mill race, which overlooked the river towards Silver Street Bridge. It was whilst surreptitiously hanging out like this that I first became aware of one Ian Carter, or Pip, as he was widely known. Pip was always surrounded by ongoing intrigue. From where I stood, he usually seemed to be at the centre of a bunch of like-minded souls who wanted to cut a finer edge. Drawn into his company, I found out soon enough that he was a pill pusher, which made him someone who was sought after, particularly by the mods. Pip may have been brought up on the rough side of town, but you couldn't accuse him of being standoffish. We got on immediately. He didn't seem to be entirely comfortable in himself, as he appeared to fidget a lot and was constantly looking over his shoulder for the next move. His eyes darted away from one another and all over the place. The only time he seemed to be still was when we got down to doing a deal. Now, my Auntie Alice lived next door to us in Adams Road, and she was another prominent Cambridge figure. Her daughter is here today, Rosemary, my cousin, and she was a regular GP and a psychiatrist. It was shortly after meeting Pip that I started to sell him what pills I could get from the cabinet of my Aunt Alice's kitchen. And through these exchanges, we became close friends, as Charlie knows. I lost count of the times I went down to the mill pond to trade medical contrabands. But certainly there was a summer when I was standing with Pip, pint and pills in hand, when suddenly, from out of the blue, we heard a strange and distant yelling. These yelps and cries, unlike anything I'd heard before, very quickly became louder and more defiant. Everyone became transfixed by expectation as the sound quickly metamorphosed into the spectacle of a black top hat on the head of a scarecrow whose arms were outstretched in manic fury, crucified against the skyline. Like a demented cowboy on speed, his legs possessed by wild acceleration propelled a sit-up-and-bed bicycle with increasing ferocity toward a packed crowd of summer drinkers at the bottom of the lane. It very quickly became apparent that the rider wasn't going to stop, and as if in perfect timing, the throng of gobsmacked onlookers parted like the Red Sea did for Moses. The cyclist shot through the incredulous crowd over the top of the mill race and took off in slow motion through the air. The bike and body, as if glued together, landed yards out in the river. And for a few short, frantic minutes, just below the surface of the murky water, it was possible to see the vague outline of the body still pedalling forwards. Very quickly, the bike and rider disappeared altogether, leaving a few ripples and the sight of a derelict top hat floating about in the wet stillness, as if in mourning for the big splash. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, a body pulled itself out of the water on the other side of the river, and the oncoming crowd went ballistic. Emo had arrived, cut to the quick, and broken everyone down to a common denominator of a stunned and delighted audience. Emo was a good friend of Pip's, so it wasn't long before he arrived at our side to say hello. It turned out that he had brought several packets of Morning Glory seeds from Woolworths, down the lot, gone through hell, thrown up, then with his head and stomach on fire, seized the first bite he could find and made a beeline for the river. IMO, pronounced Emo, was a nickname given to him from the play on the initials of his full name, Ian Owen Moore. Emo had Pip's distracted energy, but on first encounter seemed more gregarious, dangerous even. Like many of my friends from school, they were from the same impoverished area, constantly having to fight their corner in the classroom, at home and on the street. There was little or no verbal communication in their upbringing. Emo basically learnt to talk from listening to the wireless. Yeah, it's true. Pip had been unable to speak until Emo took him under his wing and gave him the reassurance he needed to find his voice. Can you believe that? It turned out Emo knew my brother through going to the same school. As far as I could make out, my brother Ponji was seen by Emo and many of his mates as a total dickhead then, a head prefect who was lucky to have survived without being killed. Emo was 3 years younger than my brother Ponji, and despite the age difference, they had a near disastrous face-off at Chesterton, which almost saw my brother being thrown off a top-storey balcony, no doubt as a reprisal for some arrogant way he'd laid down the law. But this, ladies and gentlemen, was the beginning of the 60s. Times had changed and faces moved on. Not long after my brother's further education, where he hadn't excelled as he wanted, Ponji started to cultivate a more bohemian image. This overt change meant the likes of Emo and Pip now saw him as someone enticing to be with, someone who wasn't scared of the heights. Whether it was Ponji who provided the calling card remained to be seen, but the fact that I was his brother seemed to cement a compelling bond between Emo and myself. Ladies and gentlemen, Emo. Oh, God, that was... Anyway.
God's holy throne.
Okay, now then, Emo, how marvellous that you've turned up.
I'll see you now then.
Yeah. I've got it here, the clipboard, so it looks
Oh, you
So-
wrote it down there. Jolly good.
The first question, Emo, I've got for you is, one of the reasons why this is important for Syd is to establish the connections with Syd and the background about what Cambridge was like then. As many of us already know this, but it's just to fill us all in. So, where were you born in Cambridge, Emo, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was born in Queen Street, I think that's right, you don't remember. And then we moved to Darwin Drive, which I called Starvation Drive at the time. We were really on the borderline of extreme working class background. And it was very difficult for us all because we were a large family. We moved from one 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom house, and we were all basically sleeping in the same room, 4 brothers in one bedroom, and until we moved on a little further. And it was £14, very poor background, right on, like you say, right over the other side.
Okay.
Okay.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
Well, I've got 4 brothers and a sister. My brother Brian here, and
Okay.
Barry's not here. He said he was going to come, but one brother in Australia, and my elder brother. They're still here.
Okay, and then what was it like bathing and all that, if you don't mind me? We're getting a bit personal here, but I'd like to establish, if you don't mind, sorry.
Well, the early days, I mean, me and Brian were in the tin bath in front of a fire. And I remember lots of times when the police used to come round for either me or Brian, and I'd be hiding under the table in the bath, trying to have a conversation with the policeman. It was very funny, but that's all we knew. I mean, we didn't know any other way, and it was really hard for me because I seemed to be very sensitive and took everything very personal.
Yeah. So while Emo was having a tin bath in front of the fire, I was luxuriating in a huge Victorian enamel on the other side of the tracks, little knowing anything about this. Amazing. That's how split Cambridge was then. So. Okay, so moving on, tell me about your schooling. How was that?
Well, the only thing I liked about the schooling was the food.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get a lot at home, or as lot as I would have liked being a grown boy. And I hated school because it was a continuation of being battered at home, and I was just so immune to pain by then. I was every class I was in, I got into trouble all the time. And 3 or 4 times a week I got the cane, and plus most teachers had a slip or a back of a chair.
Yeah.
So I became hardened and immune pretty quickly, very young.
Any pain.
To any pain.
Yeah. That's good. That's amazing.
And Brian always would say that he could see that I would never ever submit to one of my brothers. He knew that I would never give it. And I wouldn't let him break me. I didn't want anyone pregnant.
Yeah. And you're still as lovely as ever. So, how old were you when you left school? What was that?
I did leave before I should have done. I was supposed to have left in the summer when I was 15. No, it was earlier than that, wasn't it? In February when I was 15. And I did in fact not go the last 3 months much. So I did leave in my 40th year.
Okay.
Well, between 14 and 15.
And tell me about that time. I remember you used to tell me this story about how the caning, we're going back to the pain thing, where caning didn't affect you really, or any of that thing, and they came in, more, come in here, they said, and he got so frustrated, Mr. Brown, that he, I think he told
Well, he used to ask us which cane, he'd open a cupboard, like a book cupboard, there'd be a long line of canes.
Yeah.
Which one would you like today? And I would say, which one would hurt the most? And I would always choose a thin one rather than a thick one. The thick one, I mean, didn't feel it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I wanted to feel it. 'Cause I wanted to feel alive.
Yeah.
So I could wind him up.
Yeah.
And I would be laying across his desk,
Yeah.
laughing.
And what happens when you got really frustrated? You used
But
to,
he couldn't give me more than 6, so what could he do then?
yeah. But you used to go, oh God, Maud, didn't you get to say, oh God, go and pick litter off the playground?
Well,
Yeah.
he'd send me up to do the fields,
Yeah.
to do where we used to do the sports. We'd go and do the back and do the long jump because I was always being in trouble.
Okay. When did you first become aware, if in fact you did become aware, of the so-called other side of the tracks, like where I live?
Well, that would have been when I was 15, when I first met Nigel Gordon.
Okay.
I was amazed by him because I was hanging about with all these theatre people.
Yeah.
Because the only way I got away from home was in Cambridge at the time. There were 7 cinemas and 2 film clubs that really young got into. So I used to go to cinema all the time, so obsessed with that. And then I found out about all these theatrical people when they came. So at 15 I started to hang about with them, and that's when I first met Nigel Gordon and saw he was different and had a bit of a crush on him.
Okay.
Although we both were gay, but
Yeah, I know.
in another life.
All right. And do you remember coming to the first time? How did you get to know our family, the Roughtons and the Scurfields?
Well, I knew Ponji,
Yeah.
and then I knew, because of Alice,
Yeah.
coming around Starvation Drive,
Yeah.
in her Jeep and her fur coat, going everywhere.
Yeah.
I was aware of her,
Yeah.
and then I had a girlfriend a little later to go and see her for various reasons. And then I think I become aware of you pretty soon when we started going down the mill, yeah. About that time you were saying.
And what did you make of our family, for instance? I remember there was a story once where there was a teacher called Peter Cadogan at your school in Chesterton. And my parents were very involved with CND at one point. And so was Peter Cadogan. What was that story? You know?
God.
Yeah. You came round our house and
Well,
they were having a meeting one day. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't so much that. It was the last time I'd seen him at school. I was on the front row and I blew up a big paper bag and bagged his paper
Yeah,
bag.
but tell him about the...
And then I went to his house and to see Matthew, and of course Gob,
Gob the caveman.
Cadogan was our history teacher.
Yeah.
And he came out and, Ian Moore, what on earth are you doing here? What are you doing here? Because upper class, working class, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And he was completely confused, didn't know how to deal with it.
I remember he said, "Good God, that's Ian Moore."
What's he doing here? Can you get rid of him now?
Yeah. And then he was a member of the CND. Then in the
Like
class.
it was illegal.
Yeah. And then you were in the classroom and you blew up this bag.
Yes. He went ballistic.
And he banged it. Tell him.
I blew up a paper bag, as you do, at the front of the class, being who I was, and I just banged it, not expecting the response that I got. He was standing in front doing his history on the board, hit the bag, chalk went right across the board, he jumped up in the air, screamed, grabbed me by the hair, pulled me out the front, got his slipper up, threw me across the desk, and hit me till he couldn't hit me anymore. And I was laughing, the class was laughing, I was laughing so much I was almost crying. And he lost control completely. So I had to go and sit down, and he knew that he was going to get together, so I had to leave. And stand outside.
Okay, so now Gob, yeah. So
Where's that coming from anyway?
I don't know. I think it was and so you got to know Nigel, but how did you meet Nigel Lesmore Gordon?
Well, it was this gay theatrical act called is it somebody Scott Gordon?
Maybe Dave Gilmour.
Joe Scott Clark, sorry.
Joe Scott Clark.
Joe Scott Clark, not similar but the same. Joe Scott Clark, in Victoria, in was it Victoria Street or
Victoria Street.
Okay, there we go.
Victoria Street, yeah.
Yeah, Penny, you would know him.
No, Ashley knew him best.
Ashley knew
That's
him.
right, she ran in you.
And I was fascinated because of the theatre and that world, but all he wanted me was, you know, to bum me. and tried to get me drunk on various occasions, but I was very aware of it, and I thought I'll wait till the one I like, and not this big fat guy. And that's when I met Nigel, and that was when I met Nigel, and then Jenny, of course. For me, really magic.
Yeah, they were special.
They were special. I was 15, and they were somewhere else. He looked like Alan Dillon, Jenny looked like a Vogue model.
And tell me how, I know on the cover of my book there's Pete, you and me, and I don't know, can't quite work out how old we were then. Or...
We are between 18 and 19.
Okay,
It's very difficult to put the date on it. I just imagine, I love the way Pete looks so much taller than us.
Yeah.
I think he's walking behind
about
us.
16 then.
He's working behind us.
Yeah. I think you were about 17, Matthew,
Yeah.
and I was about 18.
You're 2 years older.
You're 2 years younger, yeah.
So I would have been, we were 18.
Yeah, we were 18.
So that was like a lot further
16.
on.
Yeah.
And you've swapped jackets.
That's right, that was your leather jacket I was wearing.
And how was it? Because Pete, how did you get to know Pete? Was that from Chesterton?
We used to go to same school in Chesterton.
Did you leave Chesterton or go
Yeah, I
to the
went to the
Manor?
Manor. I left
Yeah.
Chesterton, 2 years.
2 years at Chesterton, and we were conned at Chesterton. There's a new school and it's got an indoor swimming pool, which was a load of bollocks.
It was a rubbish
with
school.
people. And I'm staying.
Yeah.
Indoor swimming pool, right? 50s.
Yeah.
And this nutter Maxwell took over, and I hated him doing technical drawings of him.
And it's interesting, but how did you get into music? You know, how did you and Pete, for instance, infiltrate music?
I tried to get into music, but I had a very short temper.
Yeah.
So I jumped from guitars after a few hours. How did I? Well,
because you were very into music when I met you the first time. You were like we were all into music. So.
I met Barney, and I played blues harmonica. And he was down the middle. He said, "Do you play blues harmonica?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you like to play in our band?" So I did, and I was Syd played in the band.
Yeah.
And that was it. But that was all I'd done. Just played the harmonica and
You used
sung
to
a bit.
tag along, you know.
And is that how you met Syd? Is that how you met?
well, no, I met Syd through Rosemary, his sister. I knew Rosemary when she was 14 and I was 15 and a half. And that's when I met Syd in the Criterion. And it was an instant thing. Like, there's certain people you meet, it's instant, like soulmate.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw him, I knew that.
It's very eccentric, wasn't he, Syd? First time I ever saw Syd, there was George Marshall. This is in the days before jeans and stuff, and we used to wear kind of trousers, and we used to go to this free church. We used to wear, instead of wearing jeans, we wear kind of trousers, smart shoes. And we went to a club
jeans.
On Cherry Hill Road called the Free Church.
Oh yeah.
And they were playing these funny American records, and this guy walks in with a pair of Wellington boots and jeans, and that was Syd.
Okay.
So he was kind of a bit eccentric, bit strange then, very noticeable. Always laughing, always happy. He was
very happy
always
guy.
very happy person.
Yeah.
Well, he was very shy, very sweet, very innocent, very
Lovely
loving
guy.
guy, and he was so bubbly.
Yeah.
And he was wonderful to be with. So that was an instant thing, and I just hung out with, and I mean, I don't know if you can ask about Dave later. And
No. I mean, how did was
I
it?
met Dave first.
Yeah.
Because he said he saw me when I worked at Vinder's Coal Yard when I was 15.
Now who are we talking about? Dave
Gilmour, sorry.
Dave Gilmour, yeah.
And I was coming at Coal Yard on one of those pickup things, pickup coal, whatever they call it, pickup truck. And I was 15, driving all over the bloody road, and Dave, Saturday morning, I had to work Saturday morning, David had to school Saturday morning. So that's the first time he saw me. And then he realised it was me, the white boy, and it was because I was black. and all over the road. And of course we got on the bus. At the same time, he left at just after 12 and I left around 12. And we just eyed each other, and there was instant connection, because he was sick of all his friends at the purse and wanted to know lunatics like me and Pip from the other side of the track. So it started when I was 15 with Dave, and that's when I got really into music.
Yeah.
Because I heard him play acoustic guitar, and later on when he was in the band, the Joker's Wild.
And you hung out at Syd's house a lot and all that?
Not at first,
No.
but yeah, I did. I went over to his house quite a lot, but it wasn't really till I mentioned this to Pete, he couldn't remember, when we went to his 18th birthday.
Yeah.
And Pete was sitting on the stairs drinking a bottle of Old Spice.
I was really pissed. I was just really pissed. I can't remember.
Well, I think there was no alcohol, and Old Spice is almost 99% alcohol.
Completely mad.
And I thought, God, his breath must smell wonderful.
Strange.
I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine what it tasted like, because it was
Yeah.
painful enough on the face, going in his stomach. But as you
wow.
say, he must be very drunk.
Strange.
And I
Okay, so,
thought I thought, Pete, he's really cool. Anyone can do that.
so what? How did you? Because a lot of it was very, in a way, it was difficult to get out of Cambridge for you. What made you decide to make the move to London, and how did you do that with Syd, or how did that?
Well, no, everybody in 65 and 60. Well, Syd went off to Camberwell to go to art school, and Dave Gale went to. They were all going to the RCA to do directing and Dave Henderson painting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to drama school at an early age, but I did lack a certain amount of confidence because of the way I speak, and I did have 2 front teeth missing, so from various phobias and dentists and too much fighting. I just because I was so stuck with my girlfriend, we were so close, and I went up in 66.
Which girlfriend was that?
Fizz, yeah. She was a Catholic girl, which was very difficult for her and her parents, because she was this beautiful Catholic girl, and I didn't know anything about that, because I didn't come from a church background.
Broke in and slept one night at the Perth Preparatory.
Oh, right, yes.
Tomlinson Road.
Her father looked after the Perth Preparatory School, so
Yeah.
they lived at the top. And she was so sweet, such a lovely girl. And that was the problem, trying to break away from her. I was with her for 4 years. In the end, I did go in 67 and tried to get into Lambda, I think, and failed, and run out, I think. Same with Drama Centre. Panicked and run out. And trying to do Shakespeare. And then, yeah, I suppose 67 was when I stayed there and slept wherever I could, which was on everyone's floors.
Okay. Did you connect with Syd at all up in London?
Instantly, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, when he was in Camberwell, me and Dave Gilmour used to go up a lot when Dave Gale and Syd lived in Tottenham Street. I did visit him once or twice in Highgate, but in Tottenham Street I did go there quite a lot, and with Charlotte, this other friend of ours, and Dave and Fizz, and me and Fizz sleep in the back of Dave's Bedford van, and I think Syd, ironically, was either sleeping in a dentist chair, and he also had a psychiatrist couch in the bed. Is that right, David?
Yeah, maybe.
I remember this psychiatrist couch that he had and a dentist chair.
Could we see one of hideous old mattresses? But maybe that's a bit later on.
Yeah, maybe that was a bit later. There was always one in Dave's car, I don't know.
And what was how do you remember the Pink Floyd? Do you remember anything about how the name or the way in which the band came about or any of that?
Well, they were already, Syd was already with Roger in the tea set, I think. And when they played together at the party at Libby's, and Dave was a Joker's Wild. And I remember at Highgate, I didn't bring a letter with me that Libby gave me, where he was going for an audition with Roger to join the band, and he'd written a letter to Libby, and said that Emo had said that it was all sounded a load of rubbish, and I should give it all up and not bother.
Yeah, it's a very sweet letter.
A really nice letter it is, but I forgot to bring it.
Emo says it's a load of rubbish and I should give it all up. That's what I remember. It's so
Give it all
sweet.
up, and I thought, God, you would have listened to me.
And what was the dynamic between? What was the dynamic like between everybody then in the early days?
Well, right at the beginning, when it first started, it was amazing. I mean, it was London, beginning in London. There was the whole Flower Power thing, and the band was getting together, and there was all the UFO and the Chalk Fun, all that stuff going on, that free love. I mean, I didn't know what hit me. Just so many women. It was crazy. And there was all the drugs and they were all doing
What was
everything.
Okay, what was Pip's rock? Did you look at? I mean, you told me very early on. I remember saying that Pip couldn't speak when you first.
Well, he had this long Stanton accent. I can't do it. He spoke a lot of time like. I mean, he was like a pirate. He looked like a pirate and sounded like a pirate. And I come again. What was that? I sat behind me again, and this went on and on and on. And I'd break his English down so I could understand him. And then, of course, he ran off as he was so speaking, like you said, he was all over the place because of amphetamines. And I had to explain that I was like almost interpreting for him. So I gradually got him into books.
And he became closer and closer to you because of
Yeah,
that.
it was like I had two souls.
Yeah.
And he was the other one. There were two extremes. It was a yin and yang, but rather a yang and a yang.
And I remember often with you and Dave Gilmour wanting to help him so much because he became quite addicted to heroin, didn't
Yeah, he had this ridiculous romantic notion that it was cool to be a heroin addict. I mean, I don't know what book he read. It was obviously one of those on the road things from America. And I'm seeing someone nail themselves to the floor with a needle. I didn't understand. That went over my head totally. You can't say, the worst thing you say to anyone is don't do it. Because they will. I know I did.
So sad. And what about, do you feel, I mean, there are many things in the Floyd, when I listen to the Floyd, which is not often, but when I do, there are lots of you in it.
Oh, what? I've got a little black book with my poems in.
Yeah, that's very, very emo. And then also, what do you feel about that when that you don't get acknowledged much for that?
Well, that wasn't actually my line. It's just the sort of thing I would have said. But it does sound very like me.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. It's not my line.
And what about? I know one line that was yours. Umaguma.
Oh, Umaguma, yeah.
Yeah, Umaguma is the name of one of the Floyd albums. For somebody who those don't know. Tell me about Umaguma, Emo.
Yeah, that was basically one of my breakdowns in when I get home. It was a bit sexist at the time, but then I was only a boy. When I get home tonight, am I going to make love to my girlfriend? Am I gonna get any? Am I gonna get any? Yeah, I am gonna. I'm gonna get some Umaguma. And of course, when Dave heard it in '68, I mean, he died because it was obvious, that's what it meant, and yeah, it's like laughing, but, and then they used it in the LP a year later in '69, and I did say to Roger and Dave, can I have a little bit of credit for that? And they just laughed at me. Like, who are you? And of course, because things like that, they spread like fire and everyone uses them, and the origin is lost.
Yeah. Now, I want to open this up a bit now.
Go on then.
So that if, I'd like for you to ask him a question. Right. Well, you ask Emo, or ask me a question.
Brian's asked me everything, haven't you?
So,
What's it like not working?
Nice. To choose a whole life and not ever to have a career and never to work and have all the time for me. I know it's selfish, but it was wonderful. Not getting up or going to bed, just having it all. I don't know why I was able to do it or get away with it, but I liked it. And I did do lots of things, obviously, in London. I was always from one job to another. I wasn't constantly out of work. I mean, that's a misconception.
And I'll tell you
How
what.
many years you actually worked?
In my life,
Yeah, about 5.
62, how many years were it? I suppose about 10.
But he was working all the time in a way because
Well, I worked for Storm for 10 years.
he'd work for Storm and then he'd have us floored. I mean, sometimes Penny will vouch for this. There would be times when we would be exhausted from working and we'd get home and Emo would be there and everything would go out the window, all our uptightness, and he would have us in absolute hysterics on the floor with something that he would do. Isn't that true, Dave?
Yeah, you were good value, Eva.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you pay me a wage then?
He is the natural court guy. I mean,
He was the natural heir to Harpo Marx.
yeah, the natural heir to Harpo
It
Marx.
sounds an absurd and
Yeah.
inflated thing to say, but I've thought back to several decades.
Yeah.
You don't know who Harpo Marx is, but Eno has that kind of, the things he does with his body, the things that he does with the language, quite knowingly,
Yeah.
are absolutely extraordinary.
Yes, I don't know where that came from. People do throw all these $20 words at me, all this intellectual stuff, and I mean, I didn't understand what it was saying. I just used to do something physical and just completely throw them off key, and they'd stop as if I'd done something really disgusting, but I hadn't.
And there were
Matthew
many
used to
times
do
that
that
I
as
worked
well.
with a guy.
Matthew did it
Yes,
as well.
he did
Yeah.
as well. You
Yeah,
used to
all
have
your
lots of
fault.
hysterics all the
Yeah,
time,
that's right,
Matthew.
yeah.
There were many times. There were many times. A few times when I worked with this Stephen Burkoff, who was a pioneer. I think a pioneer in the British theatre. And I used to steal stuff from Emo. I literally steal a lot of physical
I told you to
mannerisms.
do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and an actor friend of mine used to say, "Oh, Burkoff, it's like cold shower acting," but like that. But it was all stuff from Emo, and he's infiltrated the British theatre in many ways because of that, and never really had the recognition that he deserved.
It's the only way I could get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Meet all the actors,
Yeah.
sleep with them, and then tell them how to do it.
So you should-
Another thing too, when we met up, you came back to Cambridge, didn't you? Was it 1976?
Yeah, I came off to get drugs and
Just
drink.
tell them what happened. We met up, didn't we? We went out and got pissed, didn't we? And you came on one day and said, "I'm going to be a satsang, I'm not going to drink anymore."
Yeah.
You got really slim and really fit, didn't you?
Yes.
Just explain what happened.
Well, when I was turning 29 and becoming 30, that was my midlife crisis. I was beginning to lose it because I hadn't achieved anything, I hadn't worked, I didn't know what I was going to do, and all my ambitions and desires were there, but I was losing it and I didn't know what I was doing. I was 29 and Nigel Gordon was filming this visit of this spiritual teacher from India. Only asked me if I wanted to work on the film with him, so I did assistant cameraman with this guy called Lou, and I had to film this spiritual teacher's arrivals and departures. So when he came, I told the guy that he was coming, and he started filming. As soon as this Indian got out of the car and looked me in the eyes, I knew that was what it was like to walk with Christ. And just instant, I knew that that's where I wanted to go. And it felt like he'd come into my life at that time. I thought I'd go find him, but of course that's not the way it is. He comes find you. And then I realised that I had to go back to Cambridge, get myself together, come off drugs, come off drink, become a vegetarian, and get initiated. And then he came back again, and I was going to get initiated, and then I met you again, and come to
So I remember
live with
we
you.
went out on a Saturday night.
We went, yeah, I mean, I
really
did that
pissed.
6
I remember
months.
you lying outside the
6
Barrel of
months.
Beef, and I was standing over you because these guys coming by being really nasty.
Yeah, I did have 6 months left of drinking before I completely stopped.
Yeah, and then the
Because I was
next
with
week,
Kit.
I think about 2 weeks later, you came home and you said, "I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm going to become a vegetarian," and all this. And you look fantastic. You look really.
I just said,
really
that's
well.
it. Well, the body's amazing. When you stop drugs and drink, and you don't matter where you put yourself to, your body just rejuvenates, and it's like I lost 10 years again. I looked 20 when I was 30, when I come off all that. And staying with you, you were a great help to me. You were a great support. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you said later that you had a little bit of, I mean, because you stopped drinking and went down to about 6.5 stone. They said, oh fuck, how did you lose that much weight? And yeah, I had a lovely time with you those 2 years, and that helped me because I was in a secure place, and then I knew I was ready to go back to London and be in London, be with everyone as a new person. And it worked.
I sort of got the impression that you've been away somewhere. When you came back to live with me, you were all saying like things like karma, and you sort of learnt a lot in life. You were good for me because I learnt a lot from you. You know how to. You say, "Oh, just keep it calm. Don't worry. You know, just keep it cool, man." You know, and you were very wise in some sort of ways. You were completely much more knowledgeable than what you were obviously when you left school.
Well, meeting someone like that, I mean, he put it all in my head, or reawakened it.
You've been through all these experiences, meeting these different people.
Yes. I had 20 years, from 30 to 50. 20 years, I think that's what saved my life. That I didn't drink or take drugs, and I had a really a good diet. And then when I was 50, our birthday was really close, Dave Gilmour. And that was when I thought everyone else is having a good time and I'm not. Then I had a glass of champagne. And you know, one's too many and a million's not enough. And that was it. So I lost it again for another 10 years. 8 years.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, that what you're saying, Pete, did for you then, you know, the kind of like grounding you got from being with Pete then, wouldn't you say, you were talking to me before about how you could provide a similar kind of friendship to Syd, especially in that time when he came to Ibiza for 2 months.
Yeah, well, with Syd, he was very shy, but he confided in me all the time. I don't know, because I loved him so much, he returned the love. And when you give a lot of light and love out, that's what you get back. Because if you hate someone, they'll hate you. Yeah. So the more love and light you give out, and that's what me and Syd had. And so Syd always trusted me, and he would tell me all his problems and what was going on, and I would do the same with him. And especially when all the problems happened during those 2 to 3 years, and that year when he couldn't find me, and I'd gone to Spain for 3 months for the whole of the summer with my mother and girlfriend. Syd panicked and wanted to know where I was, and got his girlfriend, where's he, not staying? And this girl drove Syd to the airport, and Syd ran onto the airport on the runway and tried to get on an aeroplane and fly out to Spain. And the security, of course, took him in because he had no passport, no money or anything. And they saw that he had a problem, so he went home, got his passport, got his money, and then I saw him in Spain, standing there with a carrier bag full of dirty clothes and a load of money, £2,000 or £3,000, and all dressed in his London Chelsea pop star gear, in the middle of Formentera. There's me in my sandals and my jeans and my shirt with no sleeves. And that I had 2 weeks with Syd, just being with him and making sure he was all right. He didn't speak a lot, but he just had this amazing smile on his face. Got some great photos of him that time, and it was wonderful to be with him. And I'm glad that I was there for him then. And also that carried on a little while, a few more years after.
Matthew, who took the photograph? Well,
it was a little Oriental guy who saw us, and he'd obviously never seen 3 like Pete, me and Matthew with such long hair. I think Pete's looks pretty hair, but mine, pretty long, but mine was pretty long too. And he was running round the front of me trying to get the lens off the camera, and he was stumbling all over the place. So he actually took the picture of us from behind. And about a week later, he came up to me in the street and said, "Is that photo?" And I just said, "Thank you." And I knew who he was because I saw him. I was talking to Matthew there, he was talking to him, but I remembered him, and I just put it away. And it's amazing that Matthew called it that, and I remember that photo and found it, and it was brand new.
So, has anyone else got any questions to ask? What about you, Charlie? What do you feel?
Yeah, I think he told me, I asked him yesterday about his teeth, because he had his teeth bad. I know it wasn't mine because he brought it up earlier. I can't remember what happened. Why didn't you take care of your teeth? You told me yesterday.
Yeah, this is Charlie.
It was funny.
Well, because my mother and father didn't have teeth.
They must have done.
What happened?
Is it genetically right?
No,
That's just what you did.
in the 40s and 50s, it was one out, all out. And my sister's daughter is here, and my sister was the same, lost her teeth, and my oldest brother, John, it was one out, all out. And when I was 11, I went to the dentist to have my back molars done, and I didn't know anything about the dentist because there was no, don't forget to clean teeth at night, don't forget to clean teeth in the morning, because they didn't have any teeth. Clean teeth, right? And that's how I saw it. And I went to this dentist who had Alzheimer's, and this dentist was shaking, and I was 11, quite sensitive, and I was, going into the chair, and it was a pump drill. One of the drills you work with your foot. And so when you lean, put pressure on the drill starts to slow down and heat up. And he put so many injections into my mouth, I was freaking out. And he had this laugh. He kept laughing and he was shaking. I thought, what's happening? I'm somewhere else. I thought I was in hell, I thought I'd gone somewhere else. I must have gone somewhere else because it went on forever. 4 molars, and he was laughing and shaking. So that gave me a phobia. Total, or it would anybody. So I didn't go to the dentist again until I was 19. And by then I'd had my front ones knocked out by various people
And another one, do you remember when we used to work, we worked for Sindles, right? We were talking about work earlier, and we had to go on this job. We worked there. How long did we work there for?
Oh, when we went to do Build Harlow.
Yeah.
It was totally flat, and this guy said to us, can you dig a 14-foot trench by 7 foot, or something like that? And of course it was raining. And me and Charlie started digging, because it was filling full of water. And he came back, have you finished yet? And we're up to our knees in water. We were there, I think we were there 2 hours. And let's go. What about the money? What money? 6pence? 2.5p. So we were there 2 hours. That was one of the
It's home in our wedding,
I wonder if you could tell the ladies and gentlemen about what you did in the photo booth at Woolworths.
Yeah, go on, man. Tell them.
Is it disgusting?
No, it's not terrible. God, I was so young. 15. Well, I used to go there all the time to have my photos taken, and I must.
It's only meant to be for your face.
I can't remember doing it. I really can't remember it. This comes back to me from various people that were there at the time, and I know I did a lot of stuff, but I obviously did do a moonie. Pulled my trousers down and was having photographs taken of me back and front, and of course the manager came across and opened the curtains in front of the whole shop.
You were standing on the stool in the photo booth.
Standing on the stool.
in the mirror, with his jeans around his ankles. And the manager noticed a disturbance in the corner of the store, pushed his way through the cackling youths, tore aside the curtain to see the full horror of Gilmour standing on the stool. Have you got the snaps still?
Sadly, I did have a wallet full of all these wonderful photos of me, Charlie, and Max, and I can't remember ever having that one. I don't think I was allowed to have it. I think he confiscated it and tore it up. because there was a crowd of people, and I think I might have let off the fire extinguisher at that point because I was so angry at him. And then that was when I was banned from Moors for a while.
Ian, I think Mum tells me a story. You always borrow the Milton's horse and cart and go for the round quite often.
Yeah, no, I loved that, working for the milkman. He had a cart with a horse on it, and when we were really young, I don't think Brian did it, but me and this other friend that lived across the road, the posh side of Histon Road, God, I can't remember the name of the street now. Well, yeah, we worked for the milkman, and I rode the horse. I used to ride a horse. That was my first time on a horse. I loved it, and later when I worked in the stables in Barton Road, Whitehall stables, and we used to get free milk, see, and 2 and 6pence, which was more money then than later, which was odd. But that was a week, for a week. But it was lovely working on a cart with a horse. The old days in the 50s. Bizarre now. And Maureen can remember that. Wow.
And it's in Bath. I think it was she had the first, and then I don't know if it went from eldest brother to the youngest, but she said before one we had the last bath.
Maureen had a tin bath too.
She had the first bath. And they
What, we'd all use the same water?
Yeah.
Christ. And we would be last, you and me.
And the socks out the window, you don't wash socks, or wash one foot on the socks. You don't wash one
But we
foot.
did have a
just
bath,
out.
didn't we have a bath in 45? I noticed we had a boiler, we used to sit in a boiler. When we had a tin bath. Just a tin bath. And then we moved to 23, we had a bathroom, yeah, that's right. So obviously it was at 45 that we didn't have a bath then.
Luxury.
Luxury, get in the boiler, love. If it had a washing machine, I'd have got in the washing machine, I'm sure.
What do you think it was about Dave and Syd? Why do you think that you kind of bonded in the way that you did?
Well, as I said, they were from the upper class side, and they were very well educated, and that's all the people they knew. So they were bored. And meet someone like me and Pip, we were mad. And that's what happened. That's why we clicked and why we got on, and why the relationship was so good. And that's why I love Dave and love Syd up to whenever. And it just went on with Dave till we were 50. And we were together. It was like we were brothers. It was a soulmate thing. It was instant. I don't know. Is it definitely karma, fate, destiny, that we were to be together? And I mean, you meet all the people you meet. I mean, there's so many people on the earth, and you only meet the people you meet. You can't meet everyone. You just meet that allotted amount of people. And I believe there's always a reason for it, that you've got to teach them, and they've got to teach you. And you learn from each other. It is give and take. But with certain people, it is concrete, and you're with them for many, many years. You either marry them, or if it's a lady, I mean, you can be a soulmate, and you need girlfriend, sister, mother, brother, friend, or wife.
There was always something I envied about you. You know, there's this thing of being able to be with anybody, really, male and female, and be totally relaxed in a way, you know, especially on a sexual level. You never seem to have any fear. And I always wondered why that was. Is that because you were comfortable with?
Well, I was more, the feminine side of me was much stronger than masculine. So I preferred to be with women more because I hated sport. Never understood football. So with girls, I could relate to them more. And so all my relationships were with women, with girls, with females.
But you always seem, somehow you seem fearless of men as well. In that
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, we were all just beings of the human kind, and I just fell in love with everyone I met. I just had a lovely relationship with Max all our life when we were talking about jobs. Me and Max, we worked on a caravan site out in Cotton. I mean, we never did any work. We used to build these caravans. It was mad, and we should we were both underage, and we used to drive into Cottenham on a bloody tractor. And I mean, what were we, 16 or something? 17, I don't know, 16, well, 15, 16, 17. Go on a tractor, stop all traffic and the bus. It was the time of our lives. And the guy, the foreman, he just come back and fall asleep. And we just drink condensed milk and tea all day. Oh, I think it's time we went home, okay then. Wonderful job with Max, that was. I'll always remember it. Thanks for that, Max, that was a wonderful experience.
Good.
And
I
also
always remember you and your motorbikes and Brian's motorbike and the Civic restaurant.
Oh, yes.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
And the Civic restaurant. Well,
Well, you rode it in there and the woman made you turn it off. And you were so embarrassed that you had to push it all the way
No,
out.
I didn't turn it off,
Turn
though,
it
Max.
round.
I didn't turn it off.
You couldn't turn it round.
No, I went out the exit door. That was a dare from whoever was standing outside Miller's. We were bored stiff. All of us that stood outside Miller's said, okay, you know, we're all bored, what shall I do? I said, okay, what shall I do? I'll do anything. Ride your motorbike through Civic restaurant. So I said, okay, got on the bike, rode straight through. As I remember, I rode up the steps and through the restaurant, and you go around a sort of bend past the cash, and you go into the restaurant, and there's an exit door.
No, I didn't think they'd let you in there.
Yeah, I got right in, and of course everyone I knew was eating lunch in the in the Civic restaurant, and I skidded, did one of those wheelie things, and went out the exit. I did actually drive straight out the exit at the back. They let me through because I did go through there at 10, 15 miles an hour, and everyone got very thin very quickly. Yeah, I did get in and do it because I had to come out the back and come round to prove I did it. And I mean the noise of the acoustics in the Civic restaurant, a motorbike with a megaphone on it, no baffles in it, you can hear it.
Terrifying. It could absolutely be terrifying. Very funny, but terrifying as well. Well, we all were in a funny way. I know. Can we just do that thing of the front cover? See what it set it up, so see what it's like. I've just been dying to do.
Embarrassing.
I'm embarrassed as well.
You were going down a slope, so that's why your height.
On that side.
So we're going down the hill.
Yeah, we've got to have our back to the audience.
Back to the audience.
Pete's in the
And we're all bored.
And then you're in Pete's slightly behind.
Pete's slightly behind,
Yeah.
and I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking to you, and Pete's ahead. I don't know what we were saying. I don't know what I'm carrying. What have I got in that carry bag? Socks?
So where did you get those jeans from then?
Ooh, Star Vest, I think. From the little Jewish guy up Regent Street. Go and Star Vest, spend some of my money. What was it, a quid for a jean?
Well, that's it. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause for Matthew Scott Gilmour.